Good morning, beautiful people of the center. Forgiveness. Once again. Endlessly. We are being guided in our focus this month by a beautiful book, Forgiveness, the Greatest Healer of All, by Gerald Jampolsky. You know, he's a medical doctor. And in the introduction to this little book, he writes these words. As a physician for more than 40 years, I can recall people with a variety of illnesses, from back problems to ulcers to high blood pressure and even to cancer, who have had many of their symptoms abate as they learned to forgive. And he talks in the book about how heartened he felt as he read through the recent research that shows the relationship between forgiveness and physical health and well-being. So when I read that, I wondered what research. So I jumped online to do a little bit of research of my own, and I searched for the phrase, forgiveness is good for your health. The research. I looked for it, and I stumbled upon a website that maybe you are already familiar with. Some of you, I'm sure, have traveled there. It's belief.net. Lots of inspiring articles about the spiritual journey across all traditions. And on it, I found this story, the story of Amy Beale, who they describe in the article as a idealistic California college student. She had a Fulbright scholarship, and she decided to travel to South Africa to assist in the anti-apartment movement that was going on at that time. And when she got there, she was murdered by a mob during a riot. So unbelievably, her parents, Linda and Peter, eventually quit their job and packed up their lives in California to move to South Africa to complete the work that their daughter had started. And there in South Africa, they eventually meet two of the men from the mob that killed their daughter. And they've been pardoned, and now they're trying to atone for their crime by doing public service for the foundation that Amy's parents established. So eventually, the parents forgive the two young men, and they become friends. So much so that the young men address Amy's mother as Mom. Intense. Now, the story on this page is actually the lead-in to the information about forgiveness research and the work of psychologist Everett Worthington, who's a professor in Virginia and an expert on forgiveness research. And in it, the article, he writes, he has found that people who won't forgive the wrongs committed against them tend to have negative indicators of health and well-being. More stress-related disorders, lower immune system function, and worse rates of cardiovascular disease than the population as a whole. In effect, by failing to forgive, they punish themselves. Now, in contrast, people who forgive, Worthington finds, may have better health, fewer episodes of clinical depression, longer marriages, and better social support, and so on and so on and so on. And even without reading all the research I stumbled upon, I know for myself that when I cling onto anger or pain or the sadness that goes with being treated poorly or doing something wrong myself, that I experience in my body, mind, and emotions a kind of tension that is not good for me. Dr. Jampolsky in the little book says that unforgiveness affects the efficiency of our immune systems because it puts our organs under stress. So they have to work harder to function, to do their ordinary functions. And unforgiveness may be one of the contributing factors that cause those self-deadening habits that we develop to numb ourselves to the pain and discomfort that goes along with unforgiveness. In fact, in the first chapter, he talks about the root of unhappiness being this clinging, especially to things outside of ourselves, events. One of the reasons why forgiveness shows up on our calendar every single year at the Center for Spiritual Living is because it's one of those things that's literally easier to put it on the back burner than to deal with it. So we bring it out every year so we can benefit just from the reminder and to be inspired from time to time to take whatever is the next appropriate step for us. Because I think when we see or when we hear about true life stories of forgiveness in action, like Amy Beale's parents, that when we see somebody actually forgive another person or themselves or their body or life or whatever, it's very inspiring. And it might very well give us the next little bit of courage that we need to do our own next step. I know for me, when I've seen somebody actually forgive, I see everything that all the books report. I see it in them, an increase in their personal peace. I see more freedom on their faces. I hear more hope in their voices. I feel their happiness radiate from them in a new way because now they are clinging less to the root of their unhappiness. I mean, there's a lot of compelling information out there that will explain exactly what the value and the importance of forgiveness work is. There is no doubt that it is good for us. Yet the question remains, how do you do it? It's so much easier to understand what the benefits are than it is to describe what the exact steps are to take. And possibly because there isn't really a one-size-fits-all when it comes to doing forgiveness work. And also because it's not an exact science or strategy. It's one of those things, it happened when you didn't notice. One of the ways to learn about how to do forgiveness is to study the heroes of forgiveness, the role models of forgiveness, because often their journeys through forgiveness provide for us the clues for our own journey, and oftentimes they can encourage us to take the steps. Recently, a national treasure passed away, Maya Angelou. And her contribution to poetry and literature has been an inspiration to so many people on the healing path. So many people. She's inspired people to navigate through challenging, hurtful, and difficult situations. In January, in our own movement's magazine, the Science of Mind magazine, she was featured and named Spiritual Hero of the Year. Now, in the interview, she tells about how on her journey she encountered many different teachers along the way who provided inspiration for her to remain courageous, to remain kind. And one of the teachers she mentions in the interview gave Maya Angelou an expanded idea about God right at the time when she was beginning to question the concept of an unforgiving, angry God. Now, the idea will seem familiar to you because it is one that we share at the Center for Spiritual Living, and it's represented in this phrase: God is all there is, and there is no space where God is not. And Maya Angelou said that this new idea is what allowed her to continue to be as creative and as kind and as courageous as she could be while she was dealing with everything that she dealt with in her life. And therein was the inspiration for so many of us. That's quite an idea. God is all there is, and there is no space where God is not. Now that is an idea that will change you if you let it in, if you dwell on it, if you think about it, if you repeat it, if you accept it, if you meditate on it, if you study it. There's another version of that same idea, and Maya Angelou says that this version of it, from it, she received so much courage, so much. And it goes like this: in God I live and move and have my being. Here's what the interview article says regarding this phrase. I draw on that all the time when I am most hurt and it feels I have not been treated well, or when I feel my body is not responding the way I wish it would. I draw upon that, and it serves me very well. God is all there is, and there is not a space where God is not. In God I move and have my being and live. Now, what am I going to say to this world if I have those ideas in my heart? What am I going to complain about if I have those ideas in my soul? For me, these ideas are so large, so very, very, very large, that when I dwell upon them, when I think about them, when I sit with them, they have the effect of slowing me down into sanity, of quietening me down into peace. They have the effect of disconnecting me from whatever is the current root of my unhappiness. The interview again. Once, when she was overcome with anxiety at the challenge of raising a son to be happy and responsible and liberated in a racist society, she found herself in such despair that she contemplated suicide. She turned to Mr. Frederick Wilkerson. This is a friend of hers who introduced her to the New Thought movement, our movement, in the form of unity. And she turned to him and he told her, sit down right here at this table and write down your blessings. Think of the millions of people all over the world who cannot hear a choir, a symphony, or their own babies crying. Write down, I can hear, thank God. She remembered. I followed Wilkie's orders. She called him Wilkie. I followed Wilkie's orders, and when I reached the last line on the first page of the yellow pad, the agent of madness was routed. Can't you just hear her beautiful poet's voice saying that last powerful phrase? The agent of madness was routed. What does it mean? Routed. A defeat attended with disorderly flight. Routed. The dispersal of a defeated force in complete disorder. So the agent of madness was defeated through redirection of the mind to gratitude. So the agent of madness fled in disarray because of the application of gratitude. So the emissary of chaos was sent running in every single direction with thank yous. In her poem on the pulse of morning, lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. See, gratitude was in her. Back to the interview. Now listen to this. The challenging days of my existence, she said, may or may not be bright and promising. I maintain an attitude of gratitude. Now, I love this for so many reasons. One, for its realness. May or may not be bright or promising. Just telling it like it is. Two, I love it for its resoluteness. I maintain an attitude of gratitude. Me. And third, for the gentleness that comes in the very next line in the interview, a gentleness that is very, very important in forgiveness work. Here's the line. If I insist on being pessimistic, there is always tomorrow. So let me read the whole thing. The challenging days of my existence may or may not be bright and promising. I maintain an attitude of gratitude. If I insist on being pessimistic, there is always tomorrow. In other words, the process of giving birth to the dream she talked about in the poem, the dream of freedom from the pain that is rooted to our unhappiness, is something that always has another opportunity. It always has another tomorrow. It always has a chance to be started again and again and again. And if it should be the case that I insist on being pessimistic today, that's all right. That's okay. Yes, it is a block to moving forward through to forgiveness. Yes, it is, but it is a block that must be held with such gentleness because there's always tomorrow. And we can always pick up our mission, our journey to freedom again, and again. You know, our organization, for those of you who have been here for quite a while, you know that there was a time when we joined with another organization, two organizations integrated to form one. And it was quite traumatic. It was a traumatic experience because there were some unhealed matters on both sides that we kept on stumbling over as we tried to come together. Grievances, unhealed stuff. And at the time, our spiritual leader at the time, Dr. Kathy Hearn, she told the story about how tremendous amounts of energy was freed up every time a conversation about a past grievance was completed. Completed grievances free up energy to be present in the world. Unless they don't complete. Have you ever had a conversation about a past grievance that never seems to complete? Dr. Fred Luskin, another expert in forgiveness, he talks about it with a very graphic image. He says, incomplete grievance stories are like planes in the air that refuse to land. So they clog up the airspace. And as more of them arrive, then it requires more energy and resource and concentration from the air traffic control tower to keep everything safe. That's you, by the way. So now all attention is up there. Nothing is safe neither up there nor on the ground. Oh, there's nothing wrong with the healthy process of sharing our life story, or even venting privately in a journal, or paying a professional to walk us through the minefield of our own emotions. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about persistent, recurring grievance stories that refuse to let us pass and root us firmly to our unhappiness. Do you have a grievance story? I won't ask. That keeps you stuck exactly where you are? Well, I'll leave you with this. It's a checklist for to see if you do. Have you told the same person more than twice? Do you find yourself having conversations about it in your own head? In your story, is there a villain? Do you find yourself looking for people with similar stories? And has it been a while since you checked the details for accuracy? The challenging days of my existence may or may not be bright and promising. I maintain an attitude of gratitude. If I insist on being pessimistic, there is always tomorrow. I invite you to breathe in with me and to exhale as we enter to the consciousness of prayer, in which we each acknowledge that source from which we come, the one source that we heard articulated in the prayer, the one life, the one presence, divinity, that is the source of all love and all power and all everything. And as we acknowledge this presence, we do so that we may, each one of us, remember in our own way that we live and breathe and have our being in that. That is our home. That is our abode. We live in the heart of the thing itself. We live in the middle of eternity. We live in the all-sufficiency of that which is everywhere present, the first cause, before which there was nothing, for it is eternally present forever and ever. And as we remember this together, feeling our unity with it, it allows to rise up within us a realization. I realize that there is that within me that understands my connection to all that is. I realize that there is that within me that sees through all appearances to the deep truth of all things. I realize that there is that within me that understands and integrates how everything is well. I'm not talking about a superficial affirmation or denial of things. I'm talking about the deeper realization as the presence within me looks through the amazing complexity of the world and sees through to the truth of deep, still, peaceful, integrated perfection. And as I realize that through this prayer, it allows to rise up in me a sense of being at home, a deep rootedness to inner peace, a deep identification with holiness, a deep, powerful re-identification as I realize this. It has the effect of altering the way I engage in my world. This deep awareness in me allows me to step forward with a sense of uncaused gratitude, a celebration in my heart. Every step I take from this moment on causes me to walk in happiness, joyful expectancy. I feel and sense and hear and know The oneness that I have declared into my own soul is available for all people. It affects me now. It causes me to look upon the world in a new light. God is all there is. And there's not a space where God is not. Becomes my anthem, my guide and my compass. Oh, this deep and powerful mystery. There is that within me which understands it, integrates it. And so I yield to it without force or effort or coercion. I let it work its marvel in me, so that I may release this word to the law of mind as a reminder to me to hold lightly that which has been spoken in prayer, to understand that it is not through effort or energy that it comes to pass, but that already through the realization of our own minds in prayer, we have been born again. We are made new. And that means to me that in this next instant, and the one that follows, and the one that follows, I have been changed, restored, resurrected. And so I let it be. I invite you to breathe in with me, followed by a sigh.